When pedophiles created Christianity, they told themselves, we can have families offer up their children just so that we can remain more powerful in what we are constructing and designing as far as a God. They told themselves that their God would forgive them for child trafficking and grooming and abusing, sexually abusing. And they told themselves these things because they said, well, I can't control my desires because free will, purpose, choice, whatever their excuse is. They will validate their deceitfulness. And because people can't see deceit or nor decipher it, the gullible, the ones who are afraid to die, will say, well, I trust this pastor. I trust the clergy. I trust this congregation of the people who want the best for me and my family. So these people who have been conditioned and groomed into going into the church of Satanism, they tell themselves, well, hey, I love that you love Jesus Christ just the way that I was taught. So my child needs to know the exact same process that I went through. That's why many adults, many parents will let their children get touched on by priests, by pastors, whatever the case may be. And they'll go on these road trips and all that. And when the child says, hey, this pastor did this to me, the parent's like, no, the pastor so-and-so would never do that because for one, Jesus is always watching. And if that was the case, Jesus Christ would strike that person down. So I don't believe that child. But it's like, hey, your child is telling you something about what the church is doing. And you refuse to acknowledge that because they painted this image of what Jesus Christ is being in that moment while the person is getting touched on, while Jesus Christ is still watching this being getting touched on. And that's the thing. When you call Christians out about this stuff, they'll get mad at you because why are you telling us the things that we stay silent about? Why are you staying silent about pedophilia? It's like you know that your pastors are, for one, lying about you about God. Not only just that, they're trafficking your children underground, underneath your church, and you're still going to that exact same church, knowing what your pastor is doing, but all because you think that God is forgiving. You think as if you'll be forgiven for allowing this shit to happen because if you speak up, what will happen to you and your family? That's the thing. They install fear so early that people are afraid to speak up about pedophilia in their own churches, in their own communities. How are you letting people run into your communities who are pedophiles, who are going to prison for this shit, and they're getting out and they're finding religion, they're finding Christianity? It's like these people are finding a God when they do bad shit. And then when the bad shit happens, it's like, oh, that's the past. We can't judge them. Thou shalt not judge or cast stones or this and that. But it's just like, no, these people need to be exiled and judged because if they don't stop doing what they're doing, they'll keep on doing this shit for future generations, and then more trauma will keep on happening under religion. And then if you really ask yourself this question too, why does religion allow human trafficking, pedophilia? And when people start asking that shit, their awareness will now make more sense to what they logically never question themselves to answer their own perception into realization or the inner processing of inner remembrance. And when it comes down to knocking away your consciousness, they understand that for when if you understood or questioned what they were doing, then you understand the whole reality of what the world has been doing to itself in general. That's why the people in control know that they can give you religion and Luciferianism because you'll follow a light bearer that saved itself from being crucified, but realistically you are always being crucified into what you're being comfortable with. That's why comfort will always win in this subterranean perception of what the simulation is offering you to fight up against or fight against. But people are not wanting to go up against the system. What will the system keep on doing? Taking your children and offering it up for a sadistic sacrifice that many people are afraid to stand up and speak up against because of how they may be viewed by people who are blind by what religion is failing to offer truth within. On our reflections, a lot of you commented on the video for how pedophilia infiltrated Christianity, and this is not to frame, and mind you, my throat gateway may be going in and out because of, I don't know, maybe ascension symptoms still, but we're just talking about how they infiltrated Christianity. And today we're going off the dome just because, you know, I'm in the mood to just work today. Oh yeah, to my Patreon people. Do got a Patreon video for you all that's loading up at the moment. So if you see me look to the side, just know I'm typing up the title and you all can expect that tonight. Now, somebody says, well, how do you know about this information? Because you're not giving us any images, descriptions. You have to be able to listen and be open-minded. Excuse me, be open-minded. See what I mean? Open-minded. Why can't my throat gateway get it right today? You know what I'm saying? Like, get right. God damn. I am reading this book,
that literally talks about the great contradiction between egos and egos. All this book talks about is the ego. Now, we have to go into history. Historically, pedophilia was always a thing. It started with my people. And the thing is, my people can get mad and say, that's not true, do your history. Imagine thinking that a system, a government, that we are all placed and born, no, we're placed into submission and then born into that submissive act to be controlled by beings who are playing the act of being controllers or authority figures. Psychologically, they knew that grooming our mind into, and this was before the Vatican even became what it was, but psychologically, my people and I, you as well, we were groomed because many beings wanted that control. They wanted that sense of power. They wanted to have this authority or authoritarianship over the people who may not have questioned what the meaning is of life or what's going to happen outside of life and all of that. So the people who knew this, the mediums, the ones who were spiritually connected, they used this and then perverted that. Because why is this? Now we understand spiritual possession. Because remember, why would your system, who just told you about Epstein files, if they can lie to you about these files, what makes you think they will tell you the truth about your history? These beings have been lying for 2026 years about human trafficking. Not only are they a part of it, not only is a cartel a part of it, the fuck? The cartel a part of it, the mafia, black mafia, the mob, all of that. The Khazarians, Zionists, Society of Jesus, all these different secret societies. Because they're all a part of it, you gotta ask yourself, well, where did that foundation come from? Remember, we are the start of life itself. Because we started life itself, there was not going to be just a good formation of life. If there was not human trafficking, society would still find a way to traffic children for profit. And the thing is, because of humanity's, let's say, lack of learning, consciousness without distractions, many people wanted to find stability for their future. By doing that, they said we have to figure out a pyramid scheme. We have to figure out how to convince people into believing that there is life after death. And if you don't do this, then you will come back to life after death. But they didn't even know what life after death was. So how can they teach you about a God that sends you into a destination for your life after you die? That was the way to get people. Knowing just that, if they were able to take your children and fondle with them because they were spiritually possessed. Now this is when, before the Romans came and infiltrated Jerusalem, my people, they lost that connection to source because famine, war, drugs, molestation, assault, abuse, trauma. Many people in their households wanted to get revenge on their households. But by doing that, and not, some people couldn't even get the revenge because, cowardly actions, people running away, parents running away, fathers being casted out and whatnot, ostracized for a reason. And it's just so many family dynamics that we didn't even know back then, because remember, history has to be covered up, because if you knew everything about history, there's no point of us even learning about it anymore. That's why it has to be covered up. It has to be placed under psychological operations, or even in the files that the CIA or the government has a closer bond with, and they keep that bound in the Vatican, underneath the Vatican's basement and shit like that. Because even in bunkers, because they understand if humans were to revolt and to stand up together collectively, they're done. But people have to remove fear. This, now when the spiritually possessed beings, because understand, in spiritual wickedness in higher places, the powers that be, the ones who keep selling their morals to these beings understood the afterlife because they're in it now. When you have a near-death experience or out-of-body experience, you will see them in the now. Because they know what they're doing, humans get in contact with these beings and make covenant agreements or Faustine bargains with these deities. That's why people will call them Moloch or Baal. They have no fucking name. God, Satan, Lucifer, whatever the case, family tree, Holy Trinity. These beings understand the Illuminati. These beings understand the all-seeing eye, the observers. These observers are beyond the walls that we call the third dimension. Because they're watching beyond these lenses, These beings want to go into that connection through the Stargate portals or through science, because they mask science as just matter and protons and this and that. So they got all these different classifications to distract you, because the school system is indoctrinated through Satanists. Because they keep people asleep in the school system, they don't want you to question the deeper layers that they themselves want to research on purpose in silence. Because why do they want people to get into their business when you should keep silent about what you're researching? If you do that, they'll have to kill you. Because these beings take this oath through Grey's Anatomy, the Greys, or these ETs, these higher deities, understand extracting consciousness. I was watching Transformers Rise of the Beast yesterday, and the villain needed the keys to open up a portal to Earth to feed Unicron. Unicron is basically like this god transformer that consumes worlds to satisfy his hunger. These beings understood that. That made me think like, damn, when the being was piercing through the veil of what covers Earth, that's how I know that veil outside of that dimension is where our spirit, or these beings, play with puppet masters. The puppet masters that run us are being played with higher beings that are being played by higher beings. And the cycle will go on. You may call them the archons or whatever. In Gnosticism, the Gnostics understand too that the archons are still controlled by a god. So realistically, your ruler, your mind controller, the one in the psychological operations or Operation Looking Glass and all that. So by the CIA knowing that, they know what God or Lucifer is. That's why they give praise to this being, because they've been in contact with that entity in silence, by the way. The being never talked. But they made devices or technologies to listen to the frequency of the being speaking to them. Now, because they had that connection, once again, why was it? What was it for? Because our people, by them being too curious, curiosity killed the cat. By them having a clergy, by them having a congregation, association, they came together in these synagogues of Satanism, because they wanted to see, well, damn, let's do something different now. Let's see if we can open up portals to learning about God more. Because the Waldensians, in this book, the Waldensians were not the first people in the mountains to come up with the Bibles in caves. The Waldensians, and even John Wycliffe, that's his name. Yeah, his name is Wycliffe, but just look it up. Let me try to get that name right. So by Wycliffe, hold on, let me check the table of contents for you all real quick. Yeah, John Wycliffe, I was right. So by John Wycliffe being the first English translator in Europe to transcribe the Bible in a language that we all can comprehend today, is also another cover-up for a Freemason. My people constructed what the Bible was going to say for the future, even through numerology, letterology. They understood ABC, 1, 2, 3. They understood that because, for one, they sold themselves out because they wanted more knowledge. My people couldn't sit with the fact that they never knew what they never knew, because they wanted to know some more, and they were taking shrooms and acid and honey extract. They were on psychedelics. They were on acid as well, because they were in their minds. And the thing is too, before social media, before phones, TVs, tablets, the club, church, parties, what do we really have? It was just hunters and gatherers. The women and the children would stay in the villages. They were washing the clothes, they were taking care of the plants or the harvest, and they're talking amongst each other. They're hanging up the clothes on the clothing line, and then the men are going out in the woods or the forest. They're going out in the jungle. They're hunting these different animals, shooting them down, learning about survival to bring that back for the family. Niggas got tired of that program. It was a program. So these beings said, you know what, fuck all that shit. We need to figure out a way to have people work for us. Because in their mind, they thought as if they were beyond just the average intelligence, because they would go into the villages, they would go into these different communities, and they would look at their people. They would look at these motherfuckers, just stupid, just drunkards. These people are just, they would call them all these different names, thinking as if they were above them. Because our people thought as if they were above other people, division, foolish against the wise. But the wise were still foolish, and the foolish were looking up to the wise because of how they sounded or how they talked or the things that they were doing. So a lot of people, they had their books, they had different journalings, they had different ignorance that many people were looking up to. Let's see the title for this Patreon video. Mm, a deeper look into an NDE and what happens, oh no, what can happen to your life when you sit with the infinite in the afterlife. Yes, sir. Oh shit. No, I think no, we're good. Okay, Patreon videos uploaded, but anyways, let's get back to it. So now, because these beings understood, you know what, let's divide ourselves into being more illuminating, more enlightened, because remember, there's still, because beings didn't have what we have today. They did, but it was gatekept for a reason, because people are selfish and they're for self. What's the difference? And these beings knew that, you know what, let's step away from the people that just want to be hunters and gatherers. We want to be something different. So by them saying we decided to branch off into secrecy. That's when people started meeting in different associations. Boule, you got Freemasons, you got Luciferianism in general. But remember though, these are not average humans anymore. These beings are spiritually possessed at this point, because principalities and virtues and dominions understand when these beings had dreams, when these beings were figuring out different equations, because they were highly intelligent, but these beings lost their way when they started making agreements or deals with the powers that be, the men in black. And they always been here. And the thing is, when I say they always been here, is because the Greys, or even just the men in black, the CIA, they've been here before brick masonry was in Egypt and shit like that, before the year one. Go watch the movie Year One with Jack Black and the other actor. But by them always being here, they went into the past to exchange that knowledge, but it came with a cost. So when the people in secrecy, when they were away from society, away from their communities, but they were in nature, in the void of their mind, basically, that's when these portals opened up out of thin air and shit like that. But of course, technology, all of a sudden these people are saying, well, damn, if we sacrifice children, if we do this or that, we'll be able to have advanced technology, phones, and just like that. And the beings from the future, which is still you and I. That's how fucked up this game really is. I mean, we are enslaved by future time travelers. So by these beings coming back to the past through portals, by an accident, but that's on purpose. By them saying that, they said, for this game to keep on going, you need to sacrifice some blood. We have to figure out the energy that sustains this being that runs this dimension. And they get on the whole rundown. Mind you, you can have the same exact storyline or same exact, let's say, fragmented piece of a realization when you go through meditation, you do your research, you actually have to start reading books, learning demonology, demonism, studying your history outside of history, contradicting everything and questioning everything as well. Now, when they did that, they said to themselves, you know what, we got to deal. And they had to shake on it. But that's also when the curse happened as well, because humans didn't realize that was a test, that was the bait. The bait was the mind. The mind said, I need to have balance. There has to be chaos. And chaos was always, or evil was always going to be supreme in this dimension anyway. And we understood that before evil even understood itself. By them doing that, Faustine bargain, shaking hands with the devil, dancing with the devil, meeting at the crossroads. By them shaking hands and all that shit. That's when phones came about. That's when energy started coming out. So that's when, you know, all the pyramids were lit up. And that's when all the cities were just ran off of just power. Just that came from the ether or the ethereal realms and shit like that. So it was a gift. But that's the curse. We were gifting ourselves more curses because we sold our morals out to remain like God. Now, because I am that I am, many people cannot sit with that. They wanted to be that experience. They cannot be the experience within because they were going without themselves in the moment, because they were focusing on desires and worldly pleasures. When they did that, that was when these beings understood, well, shit, now we gotta actually do this shit or else we're gonna die. And that's what was said. For example, if you're going to become famous, if you're going to become a god or a philanthropist or a philosopher, a scientist, a doctor, psychologist, an athlete, entertainer, a streamer, whatever, at the highest level, the highest degree, what do you got to do? For free. Sell your morals. And because these beings took their time, sweating, thinking, overthinking, like, damn, they couldn't even sleep, tossing and turning, thinking to themselves, okay, if I don't do this shit, looking at their family, my family could die. If I make this agreement though, and the thing is too, before the agreement was made, they said, I could better my family's life if I do this shit. And then the world will look at me and praise me and idolize me. When that happened, the people in the community, people just going to school, people just playing around, they didn't have time to think about what their hierarchies were doing behind closed doors. You don't, for example, you don't wake up and think about what your government is really doing if you're in the government, because if you're in the government, you keep it secret. But for us citizens, we're going to work, we're going to school, we're exercising, cooking, we're worrying about things in our daily life. But in their daily life, what are they worried about? That was the difference. That was the whole divide. And we missed that shit because we were distracted by the game. They stopped playing it and we still playing it. What's the difference though? Now, by them doing that, by these beings looking at their families and shit like that, they said to themselves, you know what, I'm gonna do it. That next day when Huey in the Boondocks, when Huey would go on that hill and that the European with the suit and tie, and he was just like a shadow to Huey Freeman on the Boondocks. That's the same exact shit. Nobody else could see this motherfucking being, and even Jasmine couldn't even see it. But Huey can see this motherfucker. And when Huey, remember in the episode when Granddad and Riley wanted Granddad's car to be pimped out by Exhibit, Pimp My Ride. And towards the ending, Huey was telling Riley like he could see the CIA agent, and Riley's just like, this nigga got imaginary friends and shit, and started picking at him. But Huey deadass seeing that this being was following him because he knew too much. That's what was going on still, and it happens still to this day, speaking from experience. Now, when these beings understood, and the thing is too, look at how you and I are talking, look at what we know. We're speaking in confusion in their language and Satanism, then they hate that shit. So yeah, they'll be following you and watching you and making fake accounts to steer you away from your path. When they went by the next day, and there was a multitude of them as well that sold out all of us. And it's before Yaku too, so don't sit up here and say Yaku, the big head sign, never existed, bitch. So when these beings went the next day and still made that deal, that was when it went to shit. Next thing you know, you got people, for one, trauma was always going to be a thing. Motherfuckers just woke up one day and started killing for no reason. It was a bloodbath. So that was when they had to make these stories up with, Adam and Eve and Zia Sudra and Noah, Noah's Ark and all that, the sons of men killing each other, Sodom and Gomorrah, it's all of that. And when that agreement happened, these beings gave us what we wanted, by the way, advanced technology. I mean, we had the keys to entering any dimension that we wanted, and it never affected us as far as physically, but it came with a cost. So these beings ended up, the beings that sold us out, they ran away from humanity, and we didn't see it coming. But now as these people are enslaving us, or oppressing our people, raping the mothers and the fathers and the children, and they're killing and they're finding creative ways to fuck us over, throwing us in lions pits and alligator pits and piranhas, or in the body of water with piranhas and shit, feeding us to pythons and anacondas, and throwing us in a shark pit, and throwing bees, like tying us up, bees. When that shit happened, it's because people wanted to have that same exact feeling. This is exactly why, pedophilia became a thing, because the Vatican knew, okay, now we got y'all where we want y'all. So because there's this outrage, we're going to help them find a savior, because there are people who were killing out here, right? They thought to themselves, well, shit, I know I'm going to be fucked up if I die. If I die, I know that I won't be forgiven. I regret all that I did. I need help. Please, like, they were looking for somebody. Somebody said, hey, I overheard you. That's exactly what a Luciferian would do. Oh, somebody's crying out for help. Hey, I overheard. You need a savior. Well, come on down to our church right here at the local so-and-so. They're like, church? What is that? Oh, you don't know? Just come on down. We got a preacher. We got a sermon. We got the choir. We got even a Bible. We got all these things that will tell you about the things that you have been doing. Not only just that, we're going to give you the programming. The programming doesn't matter. Just come on down. The thing is to come as you are. We accept anybody, anything. You believe in a God, right? Well, God sees what you're doing. And the thing is, if you keep doing what you're doing, you will go to hell. Hell? Wait, what is that? Well, it's a place that people who do bad things will just burn forever. Burn forever? Really? Hey, honey, come here real quick. Yeah, what's going on? Hey, sir, you must be the father of the house. Well, I was just telling your wife, and oh, you have kids, even better. Mind you, the person's this family's at this goddamn door, just listening, ears getting tickled. Satanism. Now, as these beings are just talking, running a smooth game, smooth operation, that family comes to a church. But wait a minute, there are more families that have heard the message. It must be a sign from God. Now you see a pastor, now you're looking, it's like this big ass structure in this temple. And it's just like you're walking into the mouth of Satanism, but you call it a church to worship Satan? My bad, you call it God. What's the difference? So as these families are going in there, because we already brought down the history and shit, now we're in the current, because the history repeats itself, literally. And as these beings are going into church, that's when the grooming tactics start. Smile and wave, shaking hands. You got people who are dressing up nice, people who are looking up to par, people who are in competition. You have all, let's say, the rats, the experiments who are in the crowd competing against one another about who loves God more, who knows God more, right? But when people see this pastor, people don't know or question, because you can't question God, right? You can't question the being who's teaching you God. People don't question why this pastor is up on the stage or whatever. Why is he on a higher pedestal for some strange reason? Now all of a sudden this being is teaching them the word of God. God never said a word, but now this being speaking in tongues, speaking in contradiction, speaking in logic. These people ain't never heard that shit. How the hell are you speaking in both parts of your mind? Some people, majority of people in this world can only think on one part of their brain, but these beings are speaking in two different parts. Left brain, right brain, red pill, blue pill. People take that blue pill and think that their comfort will get them what they desire. But take that red pill, you end up seeing what you're still asleep to. There's no difference when you take both of the pills, because either way it goes, it's still going to be your mind control. Now, these controllers on this stage are giving people the word of God. Not only just that, the people in these caves, the Waldensians or these Europeans who just watched us document this shit. So remember, our people who were leaving these towns, different communities, in America, Africa, Middle East, in the Asian culture, Canada, South America, so all around the dimension, these beings lost their way. Because they lost their way, there were people who were able to escape. They were able to escape because they see what the fuck was going on, and they were tired of it. And so by them doing that, they were documenting from above, and they would sneak into the villages and see what was going on. So every day, it was like people were trying to be, some people were trying to be good citizens, but there was always somebody who was just like, they would be walking, you got your kids, everything's copacetic, boom, kid getting snatched up. And everybody's looking and shit, they like, looking away, because, and before 2026 and even now, it was such a common practice to take a child. What was it for though? It was to feed these beings in different dimensions, underground, underneath our feet. And the thing is too, because the acceleration of opening up or expanding atoms, right? Colliding atoms and expanding different, let's say, forms of what cells were providing in that moment through science. These beings are opening up, metaphysics or quantum physics. But I'm going into these dimensions. They themselves did exactly what we told ourselves to never do. We got greedy though, and that greed is talked about in the Bible. So because people were greedy, that's when they went and entered into these dimensions, and now they were seeing the infinite. But I'm seeing the infinite, they told themselves, oh yeah, we can design a church this way, that way. And the thing is too, God or the Almighty Observer is watching all this shit happen, because why? It had to happen on purpose. And the thing is, we were doing that on purpose as well, to keep the game, to keep the game going. Now that you got all these churches and shit like that, there are people in communities, there are people in communities who did not care, about their children being trafficked, because in these different communities, all around the globe, or all around this dimension, by the way, people already had a fucked up mentality of what they were placed into because of societal norm, and even ancestry as well. Because our ancestors allowed that shit, it became a common knowing, like, hey, pedophilia exists, and child trafficking exists and shit like that. So children would speak up about what was going on in the churches. Because for one, people are spiritually possessed. That's how this shit started. People are spiritually possessed by parasites, astral leeches. And by these dimension travelers going into weak minds, the ones who were just in suffering, the ones who were always traumatized, who were always abused, all of that. They took over their mental, programmed that, and groomed them psychologically to where they were in control of the masses. By them splitting up and becoming wise to foolish people, these beings are now taking children. Parents would see that it's happening, but they wouldn't know what to do because if they spoke up, what would happen to them? A lot of times too, if the families did speak up, they would be threatened to be killed and slaughtered, etc. So they had to keep their mouth shut and let this shit happen. Not just that, there were a lot of fathers, there were a lot of mothers as well, who were for money, for higher status. They were okay with giving their children away for money, for profit, for gold, silver, whatever the case, for houses, for mules, farmland. And because they're okay with that, they see their child go away. Now, when these children are escaping, what do you think is happening to the child's program? The children got trafficked, and the ones who were able to escape, because some do escape, but they can't tell that story because of the system see that they escape. Oh, okay, you got off, but don't speak up on it or else. These beings speak up. They're still fucked up in the mind with what happened in their childhood. Every day is just a replay of their childhood. They can't even think consciously in their 30s or 40s or 50s. Now, when they have children, cycle continues. It keeps on going. So now when people are just out and about in society and a motherfucker snatch their kid up, and help me, my kid. People looking like another day in a simulation. And it became normal. It became common. Fast forward, it's even worse. People are trafficking their children to the Roman Empire, the Vatican, that's still reigning supreme, obviously. And these people don't give a fuck because what's in it for them to tell society about the Vatican teaching people about grooming tactics that they themselves were trafficked in? Now, because these people were trafficked in these grooming realms or these grooming practices that the congregation or the clergy or these beings were practicing or conversing in, that was when the unknown became fearful to humanity. Because damn, it happened to me. I couldn't question. I didn't get the justice that I have. So if their child goes through it, you have to figure that out yourself. You know, you and your brothers or your siblings, your sisters, y'all worry about that. I can't help you because nobody cared about me when I was trafficked, so I don't care about you. Now the kids are like, damn mom, damn dad, that's how you really feel? Like the passion it is to me and you don't even give a fuck. I don't want to believe that. Look, I'm just too tired to hear. Once that happens, now the child's mad. They hold on to that anger for the rest of their life. If they had children today, if their child says, mom, dad, I ain't trying to hear it, same cycle. Same cycle. These beings could not keep their hands to themselves, and they knew they had to make that agreement, and it's fucked up. It was required. They had to sell children a blood sacrifice in order for them to keep on seeing this image of God. Their brain and their feelings taught them what to lie about. Because they were blind by these lies, they thought as if these lies that were made in blood sacrifices gained them enlightenment or illuminating realizations that they were still asleep to. Remember in Apocalypto, even the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, these beings thought as if by them killing the people even in their villages and their communities, they thought as if that was a sacrifice that God or the light bearer demanded. They were sun worshiping entities that did not realize what they were practicing behind closed doors. And by them even being under these practices, they themselves wanted to be like the entertainers today. And because they did that, that's why the morals of humanity is depleted. And because they felt this way about themselves, even in biblical time periods, even now, when you question a pastor, why aren't you speaking up on child trafficking? It's not a part of their curriculum. They don't have time for that. Or they'll give you some bullshit excuse. It's like, as you keep on seeing what religion is doing, religion is trafficking your children. And they're touching on them, grooming them. You have people who are faking it just to be viewed a certain way, to be validated by people who are still unconscious. Notice that there are many households, there are many homes that accept pedophilia because there are many families right now who know that their their mom's best friend or their dad's best friend, their uncle, their aunt, their cousin is out here sexually assaulting the younger generation. But for what though? And the thing is too, families are so fucked up. They'll say keep it in the family. We don't like to do that. No, we're family. We stay as a unit. We stay as one. Fuck all that. If you know that somebody in your family is touching on you or touching on other kids or whatever the case may be, snitch on that motherfucker. Like, the person that is the victim needs help. And that's the problem. People are so afraid of what can happen to them. And fuck what happens to you. Somebody needs your help. And yes, it sucks that you may not have gotten the justice that you deserve, but you can still help someone today get the justice that you also can get right now. That's why they sell you an advertisement of sex. That's why they want people to be sexual. That's why they're teaching second graders about sexual orientation, and vagina, and dicks. And it's like the world is perverted because people perverted or were perverted themselves. People cannot control their lustful nature. They couldn't control their flesh, and the flesh took over. But how is that possible? People fuck themselves mentally because of how they think or how the world thinks of them. And during these thoughts, people were not able to get a comprehensive articulation on why these things happen to them. So what are they doing to the world? They're only acting on what they've seen themselves do or what has happened to them. That's why when these pedophiles infiltrate religion and your school system and the entertainment industry and these celebrities, they're doing it for a reason. They're showing you, yeah, they were fucked up. By the way, we fucked them up. And because we were fucked up ourselves, now that shit comes right back in full circle. Life is an energetic cycle of trauma, and these traumatic perverted experiences will never end till people become one with themselves. We have to heal ourselves, forgive ourselves for what people allow themselves to constantly go through. We have to be able to listen to the younger generation and older generations as well for what they have went through in their trauma. Stop being a fucking dickhead and ignoring people when they're talking to you about what they want to heal in. People need help, and people do not want to be alone, and people are afraid of what they went through, and that's exactly why they let their children go through the exact same shit. If you are in religion, if you believe in a God, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you believe in a pedophile's opinion and imagination of what they still want your kids to believe in. Have a great Nirvana Divine Reflection.